Yes to all of the things. Yes, go read it, yes. Sorry about the washing machine noise in this video. I had clothes to be cleaned. What can you do? Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith, and today I am bringing you my June reading wrap-up. Woohoo! It's finally July. Summer is happening. I have sunburn. It's a great time to be alive. As you will know if you watched my TBR, June was my Book a Day in June reading challenge. 4th year running. Finished it. Very happy about it. Read exactly 30 books in June. Oh, I forgot to look up what the end of my TBR numbers were. We'll do that at the end. I have a big old stack behind me. I have some covers that will be going up on screen. I don't know why I did it like that, but there we go. Yeah, I'm here to tell you all about everything I read. So grab a cup of whatever beverage you choose, because I don't know if this is going to be a long one or not. As ever, I wrote down everything in a notebook because I'm old school, and I didn't even use star ratings this month. So we are going to be purely talking about the emotions I'm left with when I think about these books. That's what we're going to do. I hope you're excited about it. Book number 1 was Vampires Never Get Old. This was edited by Zoraida, Cordova and Natalie C. Parker, and it is a collection of short stories to do with vampires. And I thought that this was very solid. We all know there's kind of a, I don't want to say a return to vampires, because I don't actually think they ever went away, but in terms of mainstream publishing bringing back vampires, I think this is what we're looking at the moment. And I liked this as kind of an exploration of some of the ideas to do with vampires and bringing in some potentially lesser seen vampire ideas, less white vampires than we normally see. How extraordinary. I liked a lot of these. I think my thing with short story collections is very rarely do I want to revisit them, and that's usually my barometer for whether I liked a book or not, is do I want to go back and read it again, whereas this I'm kind of like, oh, that was interesting, now I'm done. I think it pretty much went as I expected. The authors who I already knew I liked, but I did very much enjoy Samira Ahmed's A Guidebook for the Newly Sired Desi Vampire. I thought that one was really, really smartly well done. Yes, would I recommend this? If you like short stories and you're interested in vampires and or one of your favourite authors is in here, I would say give it a read. I think it won't necessarily be on my shelf for a hugely long time, is my theory. Following on with the vampire theme and dipping slightly out of our chronological order, because I need to talk about them all in one go. This is also me retrieving all of my bookmarks from my books that have just been left in there. This is the Solis Invicti series by Josie Jaffrey. So we have A Bargain in Silver, The Price of Silver, Prince of Silver, Price of Silver, Bound in Silver, and The Silver Bullet. And I'm not going to hold all of them up because I have tiny, tiny bird arms. Oh, I should say, disclaimer, I do know Josie personally. She's not paying me to talk about her books. That's just something you probably want to keep in mind. This is, by necessity, a little bit of a biased review. There is some bias there. So these are set in London, where the zombie apocalypse comes about very, very quickly at the start of book 1, and our main character is there in London when basically the vampires, the Silver they prefer to be called, emerge, and they're like, we can keep you safe from the Weepers, who are effectively zombies, and this plague that's going around. You just have to agree to give us your blood on occasion and we'll keep you all safe and it'll be a great time. And our main character, because she's the main character, is incredibly special to one of the vampires very quickly. And there's sort of a lot of very good kind of classic-y vampire tropes in these, but also there's some interesting new ideas brought in. I like Josie Jaffrey's world building. A lot of the side characters I thought were really interesting. I didn't love the main character purely because she makes decisions I wouldn't make, and that's definitely a personal preference thing. I didn't love a lot of the choices that she found herself making, but I think that was more of a me problem. But bear in mind, if you don't like a main character who makes daft choices sometimes, that might not be for you. I think that I didn't love the ending of the series totally, just because it felt a little bit quick, but there is another trilogy, so I'm hoping that fleshes that out a little bit more, but I can't remember. I have read it before, but I can't remember. I think the third book was actually my favourite, which is the darkest of all of them. It's, I'm not going to talk about it because it will spoil it for you, but it's the darkest of all of them. I got the characters a lot more. I think there was more focus in it than in the other ones. The only other thing I'll say is these take place over a very quick period of time, which I wasn't necessarily expecting across 4 books, but I actually kind of enjoyed. Like, I got very used to reading things that happened over the span of years and years, and characters grew and changed a huge amount, whereas this, it was kind of like, they're still growing to do after the end of this book. I enjoyed that greatly. Yes, I would say give it a go if that's something that you're interested in. If you are wanting paranormal vampire stuff in this day and age, go for it, go for it. Oh, I forgot to mention the actual first book I read. I just wanted to jump straight into my physical books. She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This, I actually have 2 versions of it. I have the UK and the US version on NetGalley. Oops. This is absolutely fantastic. This is what I think of when I think of a military fantasy done well for me. I appreciate that people who like military fantasy for the reasons I don't like military fantasy might feel differently, but this kind of like campaign strategy feeling and different characters having different stuff to do in a war. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I really liked the queerness of the story. I think that was good. I know that's something that a lot of people are excited about. It's one that I really want to reread, and I actually really do want to buy it. And now, right now, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I want to reread it, because it had a lot of really good moments. If you want a war story, a kind of slightly historically based war story, I don't know much about that period of history, but I found it very interesting, then yeah, go for it. It's a great time. Yes to all of the things. Yes, go read it. Yes. Can't believe I didn't talk about that one first. My list let me down. Da-da-da-da, Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennet. This, I didn't know anything about going in. I had no idea of the tone. I had no idea of the setting. I had no idea really of anything. I adored this. This was exactly what I wanted from a city-based fantasy. I like a plucky young thief who gets sucked into something bigger than she thought that there would be, and there being a companion of some sorts. I just thought this was fantastic. I love the magic in this. I love this idea of scriving. I want to say it's scriving. I loved this magic system. It reminded me of Mistborn in a sense. Like, some of the elements of the story reminded me of the feelings I got when I read Mistborn for the first time. Good stuff. Really good stuff. Solid stuff. I am excited to read the other two. I think it's going to be similar to The Killing Moon, where I've now read this one and I'm like, great, I can now pick up the other two as soon as I can, and I won't get to it till like August, September maybe, and I'll need to reread this. But I'm not disappointed because I want to reread this. I'm excited about it. After that, I read Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This is a Six Swans, are they swans in the original? I think. Retelling. And it's set in a world where magic is forbidden, but our main character has magic. Oh my goodness, who'd have ever thought it in a YA? That's fairly dismissive. It's a very good story. I liked a lot of elements of this book. I think there were some things that I really need to see art of because I cannot visualize it. So our main character is cursed in such a way that she cannot talk about what has happened to her, because if she could just go and tell people, hey, I'm actually the princess and someone turned my brothers into cranes, that would be a very quick end to the story. So she has like a bowl on her head, but I can't envision how the bowl worked and why nobody questioned the bowl. And it's just one of those things where the more I think about it, the more I think I must have missed a section where it explained this, because why did no one? I don't know. So if you know, let me know. But overall, I found the actual story really compelling. I thought that the magical elements introduced in the story were really interesting. And yeah, I believe there is a sequel, I think. I can't remember now. And I would read it if there were one, basically, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. I thought I would kind of read this and be like, eh. But actually, I liked the main character. I liked the romance. I liked the interesting things it did with elements of the story that I wasn't expecting at all, which was good. Because sometimes retellings are very by the book, quite literally, whereas this did some slight twists and turns that I wasn't necessarily anticipating, which just helped it feel a little bit fresh. So if you like a YA retelling, go for it. If you're not necessarily in the mood for that, this won't be for you. But if that's your jam, eat it on a scone. Then I read Animorphs 22. That video is up. You can go and watch that video. Please do enjoy it. I can't even remember which Animorphs book it was now, but that exists. After that, I read the new Becky Chambers, A Psalm for the Wild Built, and it is utterly beautiful. This is a novella. It is set in a world where robots got up and wandered off one day. They decided, hey, no more humans, we're gonna go, and our main character is a tea monk living in this society that does not have AI or robots anymore, and it's quite an idyllic society, but the tea monk feels very not at peace with where they are, and they decide to basically go off on a journey to find some purpose in life, and on the way encounter a robot who has come back to ask, what does humanity need, what's going on with you guys? And it's just stunning, like a book that really captured where I am at in kind of my, like, what am I doing here and what has value kind of place. And I think it will probably speak to a lot of people in the same way. Becky Chambers' writing is always absolutely beautiful. This setting is great. I'm excited for more novellas in this world. I'm excited to see where this story goes now that that setup has been done. I think that'll be really cool to find out. And yes, would recommend, definitely. Still working through my NetGalley shelf, I had In the Watchful City. This is another novella. This is one of those kinds of novellas that are more a series of stories that flow together and come back together at a point and then branch out again. We are in this futuristic city, alternate fantasy city. I can't picture it in my head. I found it really hard to visualise. That's not a bad thing, just couldn't see it. We have a character meets another character who has a collection of objects, and each of the objects reveals a story. This is a book I need to reread. Now I'm thinking about it, I don't necessarily think I got what I was meant to get out of this. But I did think that the writing was beautiful. I thought it was really interesting to use neopronouns in the book, not in terms of like, ooh, how quirky neopronouns, but just I hadn't read a book that did that wasn't Becky Chambers, I don't think. I found it worked really well, and if you are looking for a book that does that, for whatever reason, yes, this one does. And yeah, I would say worth reading. I don't have the same like, oh, I really want to reread that I have with the Becky Chambers, but I do have it would probably be worth my time rereading that. I'm sure there was more to get out of it. That kind of thing. I bet it would be good on audiobook. Karen Memory by Elizabeth Bear. That was the 9th book I read. This is a steampunk Jack the Ripper yarn, to quote the back cover, in that our main character is a prostitute. Here she is, here's Karen. The story is about investigating a series of murders, but also a lot about freeing people in less than good working conditions, and I'm trying to remember now, sapphic romance, which is always nice, a mesmerising evocation of classic steam-powered science. There you go. I did think this was a really good story. I got a little bit hung up on the voice at times. It didn't quite immerse me in the story, I think. It just felt a little bit like fake in a way, which is probably a me hang up. But I did really enjoy it. I thought that the romance was sweet when it got going. I didn't love the start of it. It felt a little bit sudden. And I think the main character is a bit too perfect at times. I would have liked to get more of her backstory. But if you're looking for just like a fun book to read that will take you on a journey and be a bit exciting, this is a good option for you. Another book that has that kind of accent slash voice written into the book, which makes sense because you need to convey that, but also sometimes feels a little bit like, why have you written it like this? Ruthless Guide to Wizardry. This is a story of a fire witch who ends up going on an adventure and falling in love on that adventure, and there being murder conspiracies. A bird-loving necromancer, a shape-shifting schoolgirl, and an ill-tempered reanimated mouse named Buttons determined to get the best of an adversary who wields a twisted magic and has friends in the highest of places. It's great. I really, really enjoyed this. I think this is utterly fantastic. If you, again, just want a good story that takes you on a fun, positive adventure. There's some dark stuff in here as well, but broadly speaking, just a book that you can enjoy. This is a great one. Yes, I would recommend. I did a lot of adventuring gaze this month. Onto a book that is quite dark, Ninefox Gambit by Yoon. This was an Angela recommendation. I finally got around to reading it. I do now need to read the other two, but I think it's going to be a buy them, reread the whole series kind of vibe. I really liked a lot of elements about this. What I definitely had to do was just decide I was never going to understand any of it and just read it and see where it took me. And it took me on a surprisingly emotional journey. There were twists and turns I wasn't necessarily expecting. Would I say I could accurately describe the plot to you right now? Absolutely not. There's no way. I couldn't even tell you anything. I don't know what happened. I don't know what was happening, but I had a good time. And maybe to you that is a book that would not be a good time. But for me, I liked the character journey that I went on. I liked a lot of the world building elements, and I feel like once I understand more of them, I will like more of them. Not a sci-fi that everyone will enjoy, and there's some implications of some kind of hive mind technology slash world building stuff that is less than comfortable if you personally have a hang up about that, but I need to read the other ones to see how I feel about it. That's the plan. This Poison Heart by Kalynn Bayron. This is not a sequel, but her previous book was Cinderella is Dead, which I absolutely loved. This is a different story. It's an original contemporary fairy tale is probably how I would describe it. It's not very fairy tale-y, but it has elements of magic and ancestral magic and stuff. Really love this. Potentially doing a whole video on it. I have written that video, so I don't want to talk too much about this here, but suffice to say, really loved the writing, really loved the world building. The whole story was just a good time, a good gay time as well. Who doesn't love that? Yes to this. From that to a less fun time, but an equally gay time, A Strange and Brilliant Light by Eli Lee. Now this is a world that has aughts, which are essentially AI, taking over all the jobs. So envisioning this future world where a lot of everyday service jobs are being replaced by AI, which is not, far off what we're probably going to have at some point. And we have, I think, 4 women, but potentially 3 or more, I can't quite remember, who are all connected to this in some way, shape or form. And I found it a very depressing book. Like, I don't want to invalidate a lot of the themes that this book had, because I think that was really interesting, but not for me this month, and not necessarily for me ever, I don't think. I don't like a book that just sort of feels, isn't this terrible? There. Whereas I prefer, isn't this terrible? Let's have some characters trying to do something about it. Let's look at what this is. And I'm not saying everyone's totally passive in this book, but it does feel a little bit hopeless. I would probably recommend this if this is a topic you are particularly interested in, or if this is a tone of book that you particularly enjoy. It's just not necessarily for me. We're through the first stack because I finished Cemetary Boys by Aiden Thomas. I loved this. It's a perfectly wonderful YA set in LA. We have Yadriel, who is a trans man who wants to become a full brujo, but his family are like, we don't know about this. We're broadly accepting, but this is something we're not sure about. So he goes ahead and does the ritual anyway, and stuff starts to happen. And he brings this guy back from the dead, and adventure ensues. Oh my goodness, it's more adventure in gays. Well, there we go. I found this hugely compelling. I've read it really quickly. I liked the story. I liked the side characters. I liked where everything went. I just thought it was really good. If you're looking for, again, a nice book that you can just sit down and read in one sitting and have a great time with, a nice adventure, there you go. This is another great one. Loved it. One of those books that you just think, I'm so glad this exists for people for whom that's going to be the first time they see themselves represented in a book. Like, fantastic stuff. Oh, YA is doing some great things at the moment. Then I read Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is a Regency Fae romance, and it is absolutely fantastic. I don't read a lot of romance. I should probably read more because I really enjoy it. But we have a main character who has had half of her soul, unsurprisingly based on the name, taken by a fairy right at the start of the book because her mum promised him her firstborn. She is consequently very emotionally closed off. She can't really feel short-term emotion, but she goes with her cousin into town because her cousin is trying to find a husband because that's the period that we're in. And yeah, it's really, really well written. It's just a lovely character. It reminded me a lot of Natural History of Dragons in the kind of inquiring scientific woman meets some resistance here. It doesn't shy away from some of the negatives of the period, like it fully looks at workhouses and how they were bad. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. I need to read more fantasy romance. It's just something that needs to happen. Redemption in Indigo by Karen Lord. This is probably the book I think that most fell afoul of this reading challenge because I don't think I could give it the time it really needed to flow, and I think I might need to do an audiobook of it. I feel like that will get me the most out of this book because I have a feeling I would like it a lot at a different time. So holding on to it to give it a reread. A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. Would you like to read a book about a witch whose powers are basically aligned with dough and baking? Of course you would. You would love to sit down with baked goods and eat and read. It would be wonderful, and you should do it with this book. Don't be mistaken, there's some very dark moments and some bits that you might not want to eat while reading, but this is hugely enjoyable. Another book that's just a great adventure murder mystery time, and it has a lot of like big epic climax stuff towards the end. Would definitely recommend, particularly if you like the scene in Shrek with the giant gingerbread man. Just saying. A book that surprised me, Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I wasn't expecting to like this book as much as I did. We have a main character who is the goddaughter slash kind of sort of adopted daughter of both Death and Fortune, and they really want her to choose which one of them she's going to serve for the rest of her life. And she sort of goes, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to become a thief. And again, we have the plucky thief, so we have a lot of here is how my heist is going to work out kind of scenarios, and a lot of quick costume changes in the dark and some good fun stuff there. Some romance, which is never a bad thing, and just, I had a really good time with it. I thought it was fantastic. A book about people who have problems with each other, communicating those problems and being able to resolve them. I thought that was powerful and a strong thing, and something I don't particularly see that often. It would have been very easy to write characters off as villains or side characters, and actually they became quite important. So yeah, I was surprised by this one. I would actually buy a copy of this one. Again, wouldn't have thought it of me. Can't buy anything. Shelves are totally full, but interested in thinking about it in the future. I read Animorphs 23. I haven't filmed that video yet. It's coming up soon. It may be in the new house. Animorphs 23 will feature at some point. We're getting a bit towards the end now, I promise. Ballet Shoes, this is a classic from my childhood about three sisters who become child stars effectively for a time, and it is from the 30s, I believe, originally, and it's just lovely. If you like nostalgic children's fiction, this is a wonderful time. I now need to reread White Boots because White Boots was another one of my favourites. Is it totally fantasy? Absolutely. Is it still a wonderful time? Yes. Let me know. What were your childhood comfort reads? I want to know. For Space Sirens Book Club this month, we are reading The Stolen Kingdom by Bethany Atazadeh, I think. This is a loose Aladdin retelling. It's got, again, plucky thieves, always like it. It's got a quite hefty romance in it. It's a very nice book. I don't think it was my favourite for a number of reasons, partly probably because I was getting towards the end of a reading challenge and I was getting a little bit tired. One that I might reread, and I think I would read more books in this series, to be honest. I think they could be really nice comfort, like bath time reads, you know? I wouldn't dash out and buy them all immediately because it's the best thing I've ever read, but it was perfectly lovely. That's where I'm at with it. A Lonely World Where the People Are Blue is a sci-fi detective story. We have our PI travelling around to find a missing person, intersecting somewhat with the missing sister that she has. That was a really weird way of phrasing that. Her missing sister is probably the best way to phrase that. Again, I thought this was perfectly lovely. I think that if you like PI stories, this is a very solid one. I liked a lot of the PI character. It managed to follow a lot of the tropes of that without becoming totally like, okay, you're just a drunk, like, why are you allowed to solve crimes? I've read some that are very terrible. I would read this again. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I wouldn't dash out and buy it for myself now immediately, but I would pick this up again and enjoy it again. It's got some good alien stuff within it. A Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. This is the first book in a duology, and I want to wait until I've read the second book to properly pass judgment on this, because I think there is so much setup needed in this book that it means you can't really get into the depths of things. But I really like this main character, Sunny. She's got witchy powers, she discovers them, she needs to find out how to use them. It's a good YA story setup that I hadn't read much in a while. I hadn't read person who is in the ordinary world discovers they have magical powers and unlocks a way into a world of magic in a very long time, and I liked it. But I want to read the second one and then sort of soak up the setting a bit more and get a bit more out of the character development, I think. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. If you've read Nnedi Okorafor's work before, you'll know that she writes beautiful settings. It's just great. Would I recommend? I think so, but I'm going to hold judgment until I've read Akata Warrior. That's the plan. Now we're getting to books that I read while I was on holiday. Finally got around to reading The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I absolutely loved it. There is a reason this is a modern classic. It's beautiful. It's so wonderfully written. If you know the Iliad well, it's dramatic irony all over the place. I was crying by about the halfway point and I was blubbing by the end, but it's a really lovely romance. I think in terms of the historicity of it is probably the word I'm looking for, like the historical accuracy. I don't know how I felt about it because my ancient Greek history is not as good as my ancient Roman, but I think as like a story it is just beautiful, and there are a lot of moments where it's like, this will never happen, and you're like, oh no, I know that this is gonna happen, oh no, oh no. If you haven't read this already, do yourself a favour, pick it up. It's just stunning, and technically adventuring gaze, just in a very tragic way. Then while on holiday, I didn't read a huge amount, but I did go through, I think, 3 audiobooks. I did a reread of Strange Practice. This is set in the modern world. We have a woman who is a doctor to the undead, based in London, Greta, and so she deals with mummies whose legs are falling off and that kind of thing, ghouls, vampires, all of the above. She is their doctor, and in the start of the story, something and someone, some group of people are attacking the supernatural, and they need to find out who and why they also want Greta dead, all of that stuff. So it's a fantastic mystery adventure. Vampires are just, it's just a good time. Like, I'm disappointed in myself that I got rid of my physical copy because I really enjoyed it, and I definitely want to read the second one. It's just good. It's good stuff. I'm going to rebuy my physical copy because I'm a mess. Then, because Angela messaged me about it and I was like, I need another thing to read, I'll pick this up. I picked up Driftwood by Marie Brennan, another stunning novella. Similar to In the Watchful City, we have a setting and then stories branching off that central point. So in this case, the link to all the stories is this character Last. So we are in a world where all worlds are ending. The way I viewed it, it was sort of they were being pulled in to destruction, and everyone was escaping from their worlds outwards, and so you have people whose worlds are about to end moving outwards, and we have Last, who is the last person from his world, and he's managed to live for a really long time, and people don't really know why, and in this book he's missing or dead, they don't know, and they've gathered together and they're telling stories about him. And I thought this was just absolutely fantastic as a collection of short stories and as a novella, if you view it as both. I just thought this was beautifully written. The world building is fantastic. Kind of disappointed that I've already done my novella recommendations, because this would 100% be on that list. Am I going to have to make a second novella recommendation video? I think I am, and probably before the year is out. And the last book that I finished in June was The Psychology of Time Travel, which Katie and I read on a journey up and back to visit her sister. So we just needed a book that would last the exact length of that journey, and we just about managed it. We had 15 minutes left to go at the end. And this is the story of basically 4 women, but multiple women over time, and these 4 women invent time travel, and the first day that they manage to do it, one of them has a mental breakdown for various reasons, and she ends up being kicked out of the program and loses all contact with the other women. So we follow both the time travel within the world and this character who's been taken away from that, and her granddaughter and various other people, all surrounding this big story, kind of tied to a murder mystery, kind of tied to more of a thought piece on like what does caring for the mental health of people doing time travel look like, which was really fascinating. And If you want a character that you can hate, there is a character in this book that I really, really hated. It's really well written, I think. I hadn't heard anyone else talking about this. I don't even know when it came out. It was a complete punt that we did. I just thought it was lovely. I thought it was fantastic. And I would read it again. I think it had a lot of things that reminded me sort of other things like The Night Circus, where it flips about in time and you have to kind of orientate yourself and work out what clues you have that the characters don't have. And yeah, I liked a lot of the ways that it dealt with some of the time travel pitfalls as well, which is always an interesting thing. Reminded me a bit of Future of Another Timeline, all of that stuff. It was just good stuff. So there you are, those were my 30 books that I read in June. All of them were new to me. I had no rereads. I don't think I had any rereads. Well, technically there was stuff I'd read before. I really had a great time. I read a lot of really good stuff. It was great to be able to fully explore all of these books that have just been sat on my TBR for ages. And I'm hoping that I can continue that into July. As I said in my vlog on Sunday of last week, I don't know how much reading I'm going to be able to get done in July because we are moving house and it's going to be a little bit stressful, and I have a sewing project I need to get done and heaps of other stuff, and technically it's already like the 4th. But I have confidence in me as Maria von Trapp. Is it Maria von Trapp? Well, by the time she got married she would have been. Anyway, as she says, I have confidence in me. Heaps of stuff to read. It's going to be good. If I had to pick a favourite from this month, oh, what would it have been? I think it would be either Foundry Side or maybe Song of Achilles. I liked them all. Like, in terms of least favourites, it's probably, because even the ones I didn't like I kind of want to reread. I think it is A Strange and Brilliant Light for least favourite. It just wasn't gelling with me. I will put on the screen what my TBR is down to. It is down. I mean, there's a lot up here, but it has gone down, I promise. And I have a few other bits that I need to get reading for next month, so I'm excited to do that. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you've been up to, what you've been reading in the month of June. Are there any reading challenges you've been doing? How are they going? Let me know. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on all of my social media. Come join us on Discord. We have a good time. I'm excited to invest some more energy into that now that I'm done with this reading challenge. I think that's everything. So that's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Roughly in the middle of the frame. Because sometimes retellings, I think it's gonna be a fantastic audiobook. Bing! Don't know why I said bing, but I did. These are out of order now. It's fine.